How's it going, guys? Cody, guys, back again, dropping out another video. Right, guys, story in Sputnik News, link in the description below, about Wormwood Scrubs prison. Headline reads, "It's a shit prison. Inmate tells Sputnik as prisoner cleared of UK jail murder." A man has been acquitted of murdering another inmate in London's Wormwood Scrubs prison on the grounds of self-defence. Sputnik spoke to a former inmate of the jail's C wing, which was named Kabul, who was released this year, about how understaffing had affected conditions. Khalifa Dibassi, who claimed violence in the jail's C wing was out of control and he was in fear for his life, was found not guilty of murdering Khader Saleh, 31, in C wing on January the 31st this year. Ensign Marku, 21, was also acquitted on Tuesday, November the 27th. A third man, Ahmed Kari, 22, walked free on November the 13th after the judge ordered a verdict of not guilty to be recorded earlier this month. The trial heard C wing a reputation for violence and gang conflict, and Dibassi told the court that he had never been searched. 2 homemade knives or shanks were found in the cell after he was arrested for stabbing Saleh to death with another improvised weapon made from the protective plate on the back of the television. Drugs and mobile phones in prisons. The trial also heard that drugs and mobile phones were rife inside the prison, and Dibassi had twice been involved in violent clashes with Saleh without anyone acting to transfer one or both to other wings of the jail. In his closing speech, defence barrister James Cody QC said, "This was not meant to happen, and Dibassi had been trying to sort out a disagreement between his friend Simran Bopari and Saleh. It escalated when the deceased became upset at the fact that Bopari was not there himself. Paul, an inmate who spent 2 months in prison at Wormwood Scrubs early this year for motoring offences, told Sputnik News it was a shit prison. One of my cellmates was in numerous scuffles and he was sent to the governor and he was let off with everything. He walked back into the cell happy as Larry. He was surprised himself that he got away with it," Paul told Sputnik. "Prior to me going there, C wing was locked down for 3 days. Nobody was allowed out of their cells and there was a full sweep for weapons and phones," Paul told Sputnik. Paul said the cell where Saleh was killed was right next to the one he had lived in, and it was sealed up until July this year. C wing was known as Kabul. He said C wing was nicknamed Kabul because of its reputation for conflict. Paul said that since Dibassi's murder, found the pool table had been removed because cues and balls were being used as weapons, but little else has changed. "Black guys stick together, all the Muslims stick together. I don't know the gang names, but there were groups of people who stuck together and looked after each other," Paul told Sputnik. He said understaffing at the jail had been so bad that prisoners were frequently locked in their cells for 23 hours a day, and many inmates did not get their food or their medicines. Education was constantly being cancelled because there was no information, and that is probably the hardest thing, Paul told Sputnik. He said some of the guards were particularly officious, including one woman who was nicknamed Little Hitler. Inmates on drugs were like zombies. Paul said the smell of cannabis was pervading on C wing and many inmates walked around like zombies having taken spice. Given evidence, Dibassi denied he was in a gang, but said 2 of the most prominent gangs in the prison were Stonebridge thugs and the rival Church Road soldiers, both from northwest London. Dibassi said Khader Saleh was part of a gang called the Somali Boys, who often caused trouble on C wing. He told the court on the 31st of August 2017, only days after he arrived on C wing, he waded in to protect his older brother Jalaba, who was fighting Saleh. Dibassi was put on report for fighting and was ordered to see a governor, but the case was adjourned when he demanded to see a lawyer. On August the 16th of 2017, Dibassi was again put on report after fighting another man from the Somali group. The case was adjourned and again never followed up. So twice within weeks you were put on report, where there was talk about putting you on another wing, Mr. Scobie asked him. "No," he replied. "Stabbed with a knife made from a chair leg." On January the 31st, 2018, Saleh was stabbed through the heart with an improvised knife known as a shank made from a chair leg. The trial heard Saleh had been involved in a fight with Dibassi's best friend, Simran Bopari, the previous day. He had no chance to defend himself or to strike out at his attackers. The damage it caused was catastrophic. Without immediate surgical intervention, there was no hope of survival. Khader Saleh lay bleeding to death on the floor of the toilet. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow QC said in his opening statement about the trial on October the 24th, Dibassi was asked about 2 shanks which were found in his cell after Saleh was killed. He admitted that they were his, and they'd been made from chair legs. Mr. Scooby showed a picture of the chair in his cell with its legs missing. How long had the chair been broken up to make weapons, asked Mr. Scooby. About a month, he replied. Why did you need a weapon, Mr. Scooby asked him. Because what goes on in the wing, a lot of people had weapons. People getting attacked, I needed a weapon. People getting attacked in the showers and the cells, Dibasi replied. Killer took selfie with the shank. Mr. Scooby then showed him a photograph of himself holding one of the shanks in a cell, and Dibasi admitted it had been taken on a smartphone which had been smuggled into the jail. Mr. Scooby asked him why he took the selfie. He said, I had the knife, I had a phone, I put a mask on my face, Dibasi said. Mr. Scooby asked, if phones were common in the prison? Yes, he replied, and he added that he had it brought in from another inmate. How'd you get it in, Mr. Scooby asked. Sometimes officers bring it in, people throw it over the walls, or drones fly over and drop packages at your window, Dibasi said. Saleh had been in the prison awaiting sentencing after pleading guilty to possessing heroin and crack cocaine with intent to supply. This goes on in prisons up and down the country, guys. The thing is that prisons, like normally when you're being processed and stuff, they'll ask you or when like they ask you if you've been part of a gang and stuff like that, gang affiliations, who your rivals and stuff, and then they're supposed to put you in a wing where there's no gang rivalry or link things like that. There was obviously a thing between this black gang and the Somali gang, and it just sounded like another lawless wing, to be honest. Violence is commonplace. He fashioned a weapon from a chair leg, and then he stuck it into Khader Saleh's chest, and he left him with catastrophic injuries, which he died from. Nothing really to say on that. Just prison life. It is cliquey. Black gangs will run with black gangs. Muslims will run with Muslims. It goes on, man. Prison is a very violent, very volatile place at the best of times, and in prison, like you lock in very volatile, very violent, like rivals on one wing, or they become rivals, and this is commonplace. But by the sounds of things, they all got not guilty. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with that, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Link in the description. Cody out.